You can read the written version of what we're about to talk about below, and I would encourage you to. Thanks for everybody watching. Dean Legge and Matt DeBerry from Dawg Post. Another edition. The day after Oscar Delp, a big-time tight end committed to the Dogs. We're getting you ready for Georgia and Kentucky. Thanks for going to the website. Another record month over on the site, amazingly, and we're not even halfway through it, Matt. But this game for Georgia, they cannot lose this game. This is like the game they cannot lose, and so it's pretty critical.
This is a big deal. This is usually the Florida game, right, where
Yeah.
the East is on the line. Undefeated Georgia, which is not surprising at all, but they're going against undefeated Kentucky, something that I didn't think we'd see this time of the year. They're 6-0, playing good football, but they've been up and down a little bit. Dean, we saw them lose to almost like Tennessee Chattanooga at some
Mm-hmm.
point, but they beat Florida, they beat LSU, so they're a team with some talent. They're going to be without a few defenders, it looks like, for this game. So exactly what they didn't need. I think the only way Kentucky wins this game is if, number one, they play their A game and they force a lot of turnovers, play great defense. That's going to be really tough to do now without some defenders. But the East is on the line, and Georgia could have this thing really wrapped up, Dean, by mid-October. Everything's going well for them right now.
Right, but you do need to close here, and it sounds strange to say that in the seventh game of the season, but all too often, Georgia's season comes down to the cocktail party. It doesn't seem like it really will this year, and it's just what it is. I mean, I know all the comments will be, you got to watch out for X, but let me just go through a couple of things here. First of all, Georgia and Kentucky are both 4-0, 6-0 in the league. So this is not a terminal game, but it's pretty close to that. So 6-0, 4-0, that's really saying something. Meanwhile, Tennessee is at 4-2 in third place with 2-1. So their only loss is to the Gators, and that puts them in third place in the East right now. And then you've got Florida at 2-2 in the league, 4-2 overall, and the other teams in the East have not won a conference game. The West, Matt, they've really not played a lot of games over there. I mean, whereas you have Georgia and Kentucky and the Gators have all played 4 games, no one in the West has played 4 conference games. With Alabama loses Texas A&M, the West is wide open in a way that the East is not. So when you see the structure of the standings right now for the league, this is not a terminal game, but it's close because Kentucky, after this, they just don't have a lot of games they can lose, and they would have to lose twice for Georgia to get past them. So let's just start talking about this game. I do want to say Kentucky's they got to play at Mississippi State, a game they certainly could lose. They play Tennessee at home, a game that they could lose, although I don't know. And then after that, they only have one game left, which is Vanderbilt, who they will crush, you would imagine. So this is really important. This line, Matt, is 20-something points. And I say something because it keeps, kind of maneuvering between 23 and 24 points. You think that's too high?
It seems like it at first, but the more we get closer to this game, I'm starting to think that they could absolutely do it. And it doesn't seem as crazy as it did when it first came out. Was it 22?
Well,
Right now, something
right
like
now it's hovering around 22, and it opened at 24, and it's stuck in around the 24-23 range for a while.
yeah, I've got to come up with an exact score. I don't really look at games like, oh, they can cover by this many points. I try to think of a score in my head and then say, how many do I think it is? Then I look at the line. But Georgia can absolutely beat Kentucky by more than 3 touchdowns, especially the way they've been beating teams in the second half and just running through them. Kentucky could be like, the past few games where they just don't want to tackle anyone at the end. They don't want to play anymore. It's the fourth quarter. They're done. They're tired. The fans are going to be into this. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Georgia got out to an early start, a hot start in the first quarter. Then I definitely think they'll be able to cover. But the defense is going to be looking for a shutout. And again, if that happens, if Georgia can score 30 points, they'll cover easily if they just give up a couple field goals or whatever. But yeah, you have to really like Georgia's chances. They haven't lost to Kentucky since '09. You might know that before I do. So, but obviously a different team. Mark Stoops has taken this program not to elite status, but to a respectable point. And I think they are absolutely a respectable program right now, ranked number 11, but I just don't see them sticking with Georgia too much in that second half.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be elite if they won this game. I don't think
Yeah.
really you could argue anything other than that. They would probably be the SEC's best team. Maybe Alabama would be in front of them, but Right now, Kentucky is either the third or fourth best team in this league. And if they weren't, they wouldn't have beaten the Gators. I don't want to hear about Florida right now because they're not doing their part. LSU, they're not doing their part. Auburn, I still think has something to say in the West. I would be. I want to talk about the Auburn. The Kentucky Georgia game. I'm going to get. I do want to spit this out. Auburn's got two losses, but none of them are in the West. One's to Penn State and one's to Georgia, both teams in the top 10 or whatever they are. So Auburn can still cause some problems for Alabama at the end of the season. The West is really, Alabama's probably going to win, but it's not a certainty like it usually is. I don't like Kentucky here, man. I don't like Kentucky in this situation. I like them maybe with the exception of the game at State and the rest of their games. I'm not sure I'm pumped up about their game about Tennessee either. But this is a game for Kentucky where they can change the trajectory of their program for good. But I don't like the situation. And I write about this in better detail and with fewer grammatical errors in Final Feelings below, which I would encourage you to read. But the quarterback has played well, but when they ask him to throw more than 20 times a game, it's not great. This is going to be his first real sort of, I don't want to say dicey, but true road game where people are going to be on top of them. Missouri, yeah. Sanford Stadium is not Missouri. I don't know if it was Missouri that they played on the road, but it was something of that. It was Carolina. Excuse me. Missouri was home. This is only Kentucky's second road game of the season, Matt. And with the noise and the defense, I just don't. Kentucky. I don't see it. And yeah. I don't live in the world of absolutes, and I don't know if you do or not. I know you well enough to. I don't think you quite do, but
right.
I'm not saying there's no way Kentucky wins this game. I'm saying there's a lot that stacks up against them, and as well as they have played this season, well, as good as their results have been, they've not played well at times. Watching them play South Carolina, that was not pretty. Watching them against UTC, not pretty. They have played better lately to beat the Gators and LSU. I thought they'd win both of those games. I don't think they win this one.
I'm thinking at least 5 false starts. If there was any coach who could get their offensive line prepared, it would have been Sam Pittman in Arkansas, knowing the environment they were going into. And Georgia had them just jumping left and right, especially early in that game. Kentucky's going to have a lot of trouble, but the quarterback does have some arm talent. He's a guy that probably throws the ball better than anyone they've had recently. And they played in big games against just 2 years ago. It was Georgia and Kentucky for the East later in the season in Lexington. And they weren't ready for that one. They weren't ready for that test. They didn't have the depth or the overall talent. And I just think that they're kind of due for a loss anyway. 6-0, again, playing up and down. Even if they were playing against, Tennessee this week, I'd probably set Kentucky on upset alert just because
I'd be worried about that.
They're going to, and so 6-0, I don't think they're going to beat Georgia to go 7-0. I just think they're due for a loss anyway. Such a tough test on the road. I think they're definitely gonna be in for some real trouble.
I am extremely curious to see what happens with the Cats as this season progresses because they've got a Sugar Bowl or Peach Bowl right on the line here now. Not for the Georgia game, but for these other games. They lost to Tennessee. It was actually 3 years ago. You said 2, but it was
right.
We're forgetting that last year was such a mess. But I believe it was because they pile drove Tennessee a year ago in Knoxville. It was in 2018 when they gave a game away against Tennessee. When you watch Kentucky, you mentioned earlier the false start penalties. And now I'm going off the top of my head. In Final Feelings down below, I talk about this in detail. I believe there are 17 false starts that have been caused against Georgia in 6 games. And that's almost 3 a game, Matt. And those don't completely ruin drives, but false starts plus sacks, any combination, anytime you're going backwards in a drive, the likelihood that you punt it goes higher. And you just can't give away series against this Georgia team. A week ago, Matt, against Auburn. Auburn had really, I would say 2 to 3 quality drives, and they only had 10 points at the end of the day. And they, frankly, were fortunate to have those 10 points. I am skeptical that Kentucky can do this, can put it together for more than 3 drives. And 21 points is not going to win you this game. They're going to need some help from Georgia, which has not been happening. And these guys fumble more than almost anybody in the country. They've turned it. The turnovers have not been nuts, but the fumbling, the opportunity for turnovers has been a lot. And the quarterback has had at least an interception in every single game, except the most recent game against LSU.
Yeah, this is going to be in my final feelings as well. But I believe there's going to be another defensive score. I just think it's the defense hasn't had one in a minute, it seems like. But Auburn's game plan was to not get into third and long, and they kind of nickel and dimed on first and second down to get in those third and short scenarios where they could use Bo Nix to run and pick that up. You're not going to do that every drive against Georgia and get points. You're going to have explosive plays here and there. And then in the second half, like we showed against Auburn, if you're down, you can't score field goals against this team.
No.
You have to go for it on fourth down, and you have to score touchdowns. So if Georgia gets up 14-17 early in the first half, if you're Kentucky, I mean, you kind of have to switch everything up. There is no punting on anything 4th and 5 in, because you're not going to beat this Georgia team with field goals. And Auburn knew that very quickly because they started to go on fourth down more than often. So that means if you get into third and short, you can't go backwards. You have to play disciplined football and not jump, go early, move early. I mean, you just have to play A-plus football, Dean. If you're going to beat this Georgia team, you have to play your best.
Well, and it's the quarterback. I mean, you and I talk about quarterbacks a lot in college football. You have never been a big fan of Spencer Rattler. Now we could see it change at Oklahoma, and I want to monitor that. But whoever is the quarterback playing Georgia has to play well. DJ Uiagalelei did not. Bo Nix
tried.
Bo Nix was adequate. Right. Yeah, Bo Nix was adequate. I'm trying to think of the names of the other quarterbacks. I mean,
Luke Doty was injured. Well, they had the grad assistant Zeb Nolan out there. I mean, They haven't really been tested. But hey, Arkansas put up 1,000 total yards against Ole Miss. Couldn't do anything against Georgia.
Well, they're not going to play Matt Corral, and you and I. It doesn't appear that they're going to play Matt Corral. It could happen if Ole Miss stays clean from here on out. But you're going to need a level quarterback like that, or Stroud, or Young at Alabama. These are the type of players that you're going to have. If you do not have that level of player at quarterback, then it's probably not going to happen. On top of that, Matt, that person is going to have to play well. Georgia can lose. We're not morons. I don't think they will lose in this regular season. But when they do, the quarterback is going to have to play well. Emory Jones. And I'm not talking about running the ball, man. I'm talking about
throwing the ball.
Yeah, delivering the ball.
Playing quarterback.
Playing
like you
quarterback.
Say. Yeah, there's a lot of athletes out there playing quarterback because, it makes sense. You want your best athlete to have the ball, but eventually you're going to have to make throws and hit guys in windows and read defenses, make the right calls and get it to your playmakers, and eventually push the ball down the field, which is something, this Georgia defense has not let that happen very often.
And more than once. That's happened against Carolina. I think the Clemson had a 40-yarder-ish. They didn't even get across midfield with that play. And then Carolina had a pretty long ball down the field. They got a field goal out of that. You're going to have to get to these guys. But, Matt, the problem is that takes a little bit of time. And then you got Nakobe Dean or Adam Anderson coming for your jugular.
Yeah. And plus Jalen Carter, plus everyone else on the line, Trayvon Walker. Again, we're just going back to how deep and talented the defense is, which, again, a lot of people think is one of the best we've seen in college football in, a few recent years. So that's carrying this team. And, again, if Stetson Bennett does not turn the ball over, he's playing very well right now, and I expect him to against Kentucky. He doesn't have to win the game with his arm. He just doesn't have to turn the ball over. And I think he's going to be I think he's going to have another solid day, probably 2 touchdowns, maybe no interceptions. And that's ideal. That's exactly what you want from him. Zamir White is running harder and harder, it seems, by the week. I expect him to get a fine number of carries. But I just see it going the same way it kind of has been. They get off to a nice, comfortable lead at halftime, and then they just run the football over and over again the second half, wear you down, wear the clock down, and then boom, the game's over.
Joey Galloway this week. Once you get down to 17 to this Georgia team, they are going to run it down your throat. Joey Galloway is very hit or miss. Sometimes I do wonder if he watches games. I think that he's dead on there. And my question to you is, what happens when they don't get up 17? Are they still going to try to run it down your throat? I think that just may be their style. It may just be that that's who Georgia is. But hey, look, man, did Auburn go for it on fourth down or turn the ball over and then they threw that deep ball to Ladd McConkey? Because it was coming out of a timeout. Was that a punt?
I don't know. It was around midfield.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was the first play from on that possession or
what. It was a one-play,
Okay.
66-yard drive. And let me just spit this out. They'd come out of a TV timeout, and I had switched sides at Auburn. I was on the sunny side, and I went to the darker side, which was the Auburn sideline. You can make any sort of Star Wars jokes you'd like there. But what struck me about that play in particular was Stetson had 4 seconds. That's a long time to throw the ball. There was no one around him.
Yeah.
Ladd McConkey's gone. And you can't, and that was in the second half, right? I mean, you can't allow that sort of space and time. That is deadly in sports. Space and time is your number one enemy if you are a defense. You have to take that away. This Georgia team, at the end of the day, man, I think that they are built to grind you out at the end. We've not talked about Kendall Milton at all. He killed Auburn at the end of that game, man. Crushed them. I just wonder if that's the way they'll play at the end of all these games, Matt. I mean, if you're down 3 and that's your style, why would you panic?
Well, I definitely think that is their style. That's what they want to do. Kirby talks about, playing physical. He talks a lot about composure and playing well, but he wants to be physical. He wants to punch you in the mouth and suffocate you and, leave you sending home with bruises. That's what he wants. He wants a physical football team, old school type of mentality still. He wants to wear you down. And he talks about the offensive line loves it. They take pride in it. They want to run the ball at the end. The running backs want to run the ball and really put that dagger in them over and over again. So eventually they're going to have to pass in the fourth quarter to win the game. It might come in the playoff. Maybe it comes in Jacksonville. But so far they haven't needed to in any of this. Even against Clemson, when the game was on the line, they were running that football. We kind of know now why. JT was banged up. But and we could talk about the quarterbacks on and on and on and another thing, but this team still wants to run the football on you. They have the backs, they have the offensive line, and we've seen so far that's what they want to do.
Well, this is a huge game for Georgia and Kentucky, and the winner is probably going to go to Atlanta, particularly if the winner is Georgia. I would encourage everybody to read Final Feelings below, and we'll see you over on the website. Thanks for watching.